Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Crain & Company. We're not going live because currently we're on Broadway for the SEC tournament, getting you some awesome man-on-the-street content that you're not going to want to miss. There is no live chat today, Blaine, unfortunately, even though you look at great in your Han Solo. It's going to be all right. But, Coney, we do got calls Friday, right?
Calls Friday, yes. Call in.
All right.
Quit calling me Han Solo, dude. Quit calling me. I've gotten called Han Solo 5 times since I put this jacket on.
It's a good comp.
It's a great comp.
Let's say it nicer.
I did say it nice.
Said it nice. I guess all the other people kind of had a mean context. But I'll take that.
I did say it nice. So today, we thought we'd put together a special list for you guys. In honor of March Madness approaching, and it's really already here, we thought we would give you the top 10 college basketball Cinderellas in the history of the NCAA tournament. So stay tuned. This is Crain & Company. All right, guys, I'm excited about this. Now, before we even get into it, there will be some that people say we need to put on the list. There will be some that maybe people don't agree with on this list. But, Coney, doesn't the Cinderella magic just make March one of the most special months of the year?
This is our top 10 Cinderella stories in March Madness history. But I did want to ask you guys first, like, what constitutes a Cinderella? Maybe we could get into that a little bit, like seeding versus brand name, that kind of thing.
Well, I think of a Cinderella as a smaller brand, even though I will say there's one decent-sized brand in here. Not a mega brand in college, but I think of the smaller schools making runs. I think of some of the names that came out of nowhere that are now famous, which we're going to get to at the first one of our list of number 10 here in a second. But to me, I think it is a Cinderella by definition is a smaller brand that makes a run and captures the nation's attention, and a school that a lot of people I've never heard of until they went on this Cinderella run. So that's kind of how I define it.
Yeah, and if your seed is low enough, I mean, if you're a 13, 14, or 15 seed and you're in one of the power conferences, I still think that counts. But it's almost impossible to be considered a Cinderella if you're a blue blood basketball program who was just kind of down that year and you were somehow a 15 seed, in my opinion.
No, without a doubt. All right, well, let's kick off the list. All right, number 10, UMBC in 2018 became the first 16 seed to beat a number 1 seed. Now, they didn't make a amazing run, all the way through like some of these other that we're going to list. But this was a big deal because it had never been done before. We had never seen it. And not only did they win, they beat Virginia by what, 20?
20.
Yeah, they beat Virginia 74-54. Obviously didn't make a deep run after this, but they have to go on the list, just being the very first 16 seed to beat a number 1 seed. And the record up to that point was 0-135.
Yeah, and I will say, Fairleigh Dickinson did beat a 1 seed after them, but we don't have them on the list because they weren't the icebreaker. They weren't the ceiling breaker.
But that was 2023, and they beat number 1 seed Purdue. They also didn't go on a run. So UMBC gets that spot because they were the first to do it. Which Virginia won the national championship the next year after losing that to that.
You got to remember how UMBC got there. They American East Conference tournament. They hit a last-second shot, a buzzer beater to get him in. And I'm pretty sure it was Jarius Lyles, I believe, dropped 28 points against Virginia. Y'all remember they had that point guard who was 5'8"?
Yeah.
They had a 5'8" point guard who's just playing defense, was the heart of the team. Yeah. It's little stories inside of those stories that make stuff like this famous.
And that's the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yes. Correct.
Right? Yeah. You nailed it.
Cinderella. That has Cinderella written all over it.
Great recruiting ground for college football. Yeah. So there have been a lot of really good players come out. All right, let's go to number 9 on our list. The 9th best Cinderella story, Davidson in 2008. Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, Davidson was a 10 seed. They made it all the way to the Elite 8, and here's who they beat. 7 seed Gonzaga, number 2 seed Georgetown, and number 3 seed Wisconsin on the way to the Elite 8. And they were led by a guy that I think you've heard about now, and he looked like he was 11 years old when he was playing at Davidson, Steph Curry. I remember this like it was yesterday. Dude just was absolutely annihilating.
And you said he averaged how many points per game?
32.
He was averaging 32. He made He made 23 three-pointers during the tournament, which is 8th all-time on the list, and that was an average of 5.75 threes made per game, which is tied for 2nd all-time in the NCAA tournament.
He made 13 three-pointers in the first 2 rounds.
That's insane. Have you seen like the backstory too on how Steph Curry got to Davidson and like his kind of rise at Davidson? If you haven't seen that documentary with the coach and his family and his dad Dell, it is fantastic. Look, think of what you want about Steph Curry now. I wouldn't buy crypto from him, but at the end of the day, what he did at Davidson.
Definitely don't be homeless and live next to him either. But I will say he dropped 40 points against Gonzaga, hitting 8 threes. He outscored Gonzaga by himself. In the second half.
Did you know that over 140,000 family farms in the U.S. have closed down since 2017? It's pretty shocking, right? Meanwhile, grocery stores are stocking their shelves with mystery meat from, well, who really knows where. But hey, at least it's cheap. Look, if you actually care about where your food comes from, it's time to check out GoodRanchers.com. We go with Good Ranchers because, call us crazy, we prefer knowing our dinner wasn't shipped in from the other side of the planet. Because here's the deal. Their meat is born, raised, and harvested here in the USA. Revolutionary concept, right? And get this, no antibiotics, added hormones, or seed oils, just meat. Imagine that, one ingredient you could actually pronounce without a chemistry degree. These folks are practically showing off when it comes to transparency about where your food is coming from. All their meat is farm to table with zero mysteries, meaning you're supporting American ranchers while serving food that won't make you question your life choices at 3 a.m. And yes, we've all been there. We've tried all their steaks and other choices, and they are quite possibly the most tender, tasteful, clean protein options we've ever had. And right now, during their Spring into Action promotion, they actually managed to save you money while providing better, higher quality food. When you sign up, you'll get free bacon, ground beef, chicken nuggets, or wild-caught salmon in every order for a year, plus $40 off with code BOOSTER. So again, unless you enjoy mystery meat roulette, visit GoodRanchers.com today and use our code BOOSTER to get that free meat for a year and $40 off your first order. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Yeah.
You shouldn't even put Davidson up there. Just put
Steph Curry.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was.
He was incredible. All right, let's go to number 8 on our list of the all-time Cinderellas. Who do we got?
Yeah.
So this is our only bigger brand, I guess you would say. And some people would be like, well, why isn't the Jim Valvano team that won the national championship? Well, when you look at seeding, the difference here is pretty stark. So in 2024, this was last year, this was 11 seed NC State that, do not forget, had to win the ACC tournament to even get a bid, came in as an 11 seed. They beat the 6 seed Texas Tech, the 14 seed Oakland, the 2nd seed Marquette, and number 4 seed Duke to reach the Final Four as an 11 seed. It's crazy now because they just fired their head coach who did that this year.
1 year later.
But you remember DJ Burns?
DJ Burns is what I remember most about NC State's run all the way up to the Final Four from this year.
Yeah, it's incredible. And again, this is kind of our only bigger brand that's on this list. Most of these are smaller.
And the year that NC State won the national championship, which that was in 1983,
I believe.
Okay, and they were what seed were they?
I think they were an 8. They were a 6 seed. So I mean, again, Villanova was, I believe, the lowest seed to ever win a national championship.
They were an 8
in
seed.
1985, and they were an 8 seed.
Okay.
So
and, I mean, and the story within was DJ Burns Jr.
For sure.
I mean, 6'9", says 280, but if you look at him, if I've ever seen a 300-pound fella. That's a 300-pound fella. Scored 20 points against Duke. They won 5 games in 5 days. This is the type of team that we see. If you get hot at the right moment, you can make an absolute run. And this was one of the funnest teams to watch with the teams they had to beat, not only in the tournament, but through the ACC.
I was shocked they beat Duke.
Well, I was shocked he didn't line up at left tackle.
That's what I'm saying. I think he'd have, I mean, we've seen basketball players go play tight end in the NFL before. I think DJ could, slide step a little bit and kick step back and block somebody. But all right, let's go to number 7. Who's our 7th best Cinderella? Princeton, 2023. So guys,
Arizona.
Princeton was a 15 seed that reached the Sweet 16 by beating number 2 Arizona and then number 7 Missouri. And again, the reason we have them here is because they were a 15 seed and they made it all the way to the Sweet 16, and nobody saw this coming. I know our friends that are Arizona fans are not going to want to remember this. I know Tommy Lloyd sure as hell doesn't, the head coach at Arizona. But this Princeton team, they were fun to watch. And again, I mean, you look at some of these Ivy League teams that get in the tournament. Yale beat Auburn last year. We've seen them be able to kind of, put together some runs and really hold their own in the NCAA tournament.
And you got to remember, they were the team in 1989, not the 2023 team, but they almost, as a 16 seed, nearly made history by defeating number 1 seed Georgetown. They lost 50-49 in the last second.
And again, that's nobody had won till our number 10 on our list. UMBC beat Virginia in 2018. So the next one we have at 6 is kind of similar to the one we have at 7, but you're going to remember them for a whole different reason. Florida Gulf Coast in 2013.
Dunk City.
15 seed, yes. Made it all the way to the Sweet 16. They beat number 2 seed Georgetown in the first round game. Then they beat number 7 seed San Diego State to make it to the Sweet 16. I remember them way more than I even remember Princeton in 2023 because of Dunk City. I don't know if there was a more captivating 15 seed that I have ever seen than what these guys were doing, because it's not like they were just dunking. I mean, it was lobs, catching behind the head. It was guys jumping over guys. One of the most fun watches that we've had in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they didn't make as far of a run as some of the teams in our top 5, but when you get a nickname like Dunk City, I mean, I can remember it like it was yesterday, watching these guys make it to the Sweet 16. One of the cooler teams. Now, did Florida end up putting them out?
I believe
so.
So in-state.
And that's when Florida was like, Florida.
Yeah.
Like every year they had, it seemed Joakim Noah was there for 13
Al
years.
Horford.
Just everybody.
All those. I remember.
Well, they're like the only team that you can really say that dunked their way into college basketball history.
For sure.
They had 10-plus highlight dunks in the first 2 games.
And they were insane. I still, to this day, if I pull up TikTok and I scroll long enough, we'll see highlights from what Florida Gulf Coast did in that.
And if you go back and remember that Florida game, they lost 62-50.
They were leading.
They were leading by double digits.
Yeah.
Double digits at some point in that Florida game and still lost because Florida was that good.
Yeah, Florida was for real. All right, let's get to number 5. Who do we have at number 5? FAU in 2023. Your guy Dusty May, who's now at Michigan.
Hey, let's make a run this year.
So I want to give you the numbers here, and then I want to talk about this FAU team for a second because they're still around in college basketball. So they were a 9 seed. They made it to the Final Four. They beat 8 seed Memphis. They beat 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson, who had beaten Purdue. They beat 4 seed Tennessee, and then the 3 seed Kansas State. And when you look at this team, Elijah Martin, who's now at Florida, dog. Golden, who's now at Michigan with Dusty May, absolute dog. John L. Davis, who's at Arkansas, who's most likely going to make the NCAA tournament and playing well. This team was loaded, kind of ran into a buzzsaw there in the Final Four, but an incredible run from FAU. And man, you talk about some thrilling games. Watching these guys, I mean, lock up on defense, driving to the rim. They were fun to watch.
You know how many games FAU had won in the NCAA tournament before this?
None.
0.
Wow.
0 games. And when they got there, they made it to the Final Four. FAU's one of the small, arena-wise, they have 3,000 seats. One of the smallest programs in college basketball. They went 35-4.
But this team is still having an effect on college basketball today. They're just at different places.
35-4. That's insane. You don't see numbers like that.
And that run put Dusty May on a lot of athletic directors' lists, and now he's at Michigan.
Yeah, for sure, who's having a pretty good year. We'll see how it goes in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. You know what's fascinating about successful businesses today, like Gymshark or Cotopaxi? It's not just about having a great product or cool marketing. It's about what's happening behind the scenes. The real game changer is often the business powering the business, making every sale seamless and simple. That's where Shopify comes in. And nobody does selling better than they do. They've got the #1 checkout system on the planet. And you want to know their not-so-secret secret? It's called ShopPay, and it boosts conversions by up to 50%. That means way fewer abandoned carts and way more of this. Hit the button, David. We rich, y'all. Look, if you're serious about growing your business, you need to be everywhere the customers are, whether they're scrolling through their phone or strolling past your storefront, web social feeds, physical stores, you name it. That's why businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. So upgrade your business and get the same checkout companies like Gymshark and Cotopaxi use with Shopify. Hit it one more time, David. And you sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Crain. All lowercase. That's shopify.com/CRAIN to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Crain. Get your shop on. But all right, let's get to number 4. Who was our 4th best Cinderella? St. Peter's.
Yep.
You remember we were up here in Nashville watching when they beat Kentucky.
Yep.
So St. Peter's, who nobody had ever heard of. I've watched college basketball my whole life. I had never heard of St. Peter's. The only time I'd heard of St. Peter was when I used to go to Catholic school. So here's who, they were a 15 seed. They made it to the Elite 8. They beat the 2nd seed Kentucky. They beat the 7th seed Murray State. and they beat the 3rd seed Purdue. So they took out Kentucky and Purdue. And it was ugly basketball. Remember how undersized they were? But they just had guys that were making plays, just gritty. They shot out of their mind. And their coach, Shaheen Holloway, got hired at Seton Hall, but it's not going as well at Seton Hall as it was at St. Peter's.
We had just launched Crain Company on the Daily Wire, and we were watching that Kentucky game down the street at a restaurant. Weren't there some Kentucky fans at the table next to us?
Everywhere. They were shocked. I was shocked.
Oh, gut-wrenching.
And they beat that Purdue team, had Zach Edey.
Yeah.
7-4. St. Peter's budget for basketball that year was $1.2 million.
Which is nothing.
They beat Kentucky. John Calipari was getting paid $8.5 million.
That run, just thinking about smaller brands, this is the smallest brand that we have on this list.
And their head coach immediately left.
He went to Seton Hall. Yeah, but they're struggling.
They're struggling.
They're struggling bad. All right, we have now entered the top 3 of the best Cinderella stories in the history of March Madness.
Yeah.
Number 3, shout out Sister Jean.
Sister Jean.
Loyola Chicago, another school I'd never heard of till they made this run, in 2018. So here's what they did. As an 11 seed, they made it to the Final Four. They beat 6 seed Miami, 3 seed Tennessee. God, Tennessee's popping up all over this list. The 7 seed Nevada, and the 9 seed in Kansas State to make that just magical run. We all remember Sister Jean, the old lady who's still kicking.
Yeah.
Like 140? She was one of the few people Trump was talking about on that Social Security stuff during the speech.
She was in the Titanic, wasn't she?
She was. She's the one that threw the diamond off the back.
Yeah, which I, never forgive her for.
Who was the white boy that they had down low who looked like Officer Farva off Super Troopers?
I don't know.
But he was a dog. He was an absolute dog. I think he was a freshman back then, too.
If you want to talk about sweating out games, do y'all remember the first 3 rounds of Loyola Chicago's games? If you're a Loyola Chicago fan, you beat Miami 64-62. You beat number 3 Tennessee 63-62. And you beat number 7 Nevada, who was just shooting threes.
Wasn't that when Musselman was there?
69-68.
I think that was when Musselman was there. And that's when Cody Martin, the Martin brothers.
Their first 3 wins were a combined total of 4 points.
Wow. Normally when these teams make a run, it's a player or it's a coach you get to know the most, but Sister Jean really captivated the nation. And I was at this Final Four. This was in San Antonio in 2018, and Michigan played Loyola of Chicago in the Final Four, which is why I was there. Michigan got by them, and then they met up with Villanova in the national championship, and Dante DiVincenzo just went off.
Talking about an exciting
I think we left before the second half.
And this wasn't just like a luck type of thing for Loyola Chicago. They were a good basketball.
No, they were really fundamentally
one of the best. What I just read off those scores, they held most of the best defense in the tournament. They held most of the teams they played.
Oh, it wasn't
under
sexy.
70 points.
It wasn't sexy basketball. All right, so let's get to the number 2 team on our list. Who is at number 2? George Mason. Some people will forget this. And Jim Larrañaga actually just retired, who was at Miami. This George Mason team, it was an incredible story. They were an 11 seed. All right, they made it all the way to the Final Four. They beat 6 seed Michigan State and Tom Izzo. They beat 3rd seed North Carolina and Roy Williams, I believe. They beat 7 seed Wichita State and then number 1 seed UConn. I remember that UConn game like it was yesterday, even though, God, it was 19 years.
That was overtime, wasn't it?
I believe it was, but it was just shocking that George Mason was still in the game when you look at the roster that UConn had. But this, to me, was like one of the first Cinderella runs that I can remember since I started following college basketball. So I was 17 years old at the time of this run. And look, Jim Larrañaga, he was already a decently big name, but this absolutely propelled him. And we saw where, kind of he bounced around to, and now he's done at Miami. But this run was crazy.
Yeah, and that was a team that lost to Florida in the Final Four with I think that was the Joakim Noah and the Horford era when Billy Donovan was there.
And you remember, a lot of analysts thought George Mason shouldn't even have made the tournament.
Well, they didn't win the Patriot League.
A lot of them thought they shouldn't even made the tournament. And then they rolled through Michigan State, North Carolina, Wichita State, and UConn. They beat UConn, who had 5 future NBA players.
No, you go back and look at that Connecticut roster. It is absolutely
Rudy Gay, Marcus Williams, Hilton Armstrong, Josh Boone, and Denham Brown.
Wow. And they were an 11 seed, George Mason was?
Yeah, they were an 11 seed that made it all the way to the Final Four. And they almost made it all the way to the number 1 spot, the greatest Cinderella story in the history of March Madness. Let's show the people.
Yeah.
Virginia Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Virginia Commonwealth in 2011 with head coach Shaka Smart.
Shaka
you
Smart.
Remember, went to Texas, left Texas to go to Marquette. know Marquette's kind of fallen off a little bit this year. But here's who 11 seed VCU beat to make the Final Four. 6 seed Georgetown, which, damn, Georgetown is on this list a lot. I got them at 3 different places on this list. They lost to Davidson when they got upset. They lost, obviously, to VCU as well. I mean, they're on here 3 or 4 different times. But VCU beat 6 seed Georgetown, 3 seed Purdue, who's on this list a lot. They beat number 10 seed FSU, and then number 1 seed Kansas on their way to the Final Four. This one really put VCU on the map.
And now you know who you're missing. You know who you're missing?
Who?
Number 11 USC. They had to play a playing game.
That's right.
They had to play a play-in
That's
game.
right.
They had a play-in game, and they were an 11 seed as well, right?
Yeah, they were an 11 seed. They're the only team that's ever played in the first 4 that I think made a Final Four, unless I'm mistaken, which, again, separates them on the list, too. You did have to play an extra game, so you had to win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to the Final.
And that was Shaka Smart's, what was it, Havoc? His Havoc defense, right? Nobody really saw it as a full court pressure. It gave so many teams problems walking the tournament. That gave Shaka Smart an opportunity to get a bigger job and bigger job. This team, you want to talk about a fun team to watch?
Yeah.
Like, this team was one of the funnest teams. Because, look, man, I was an offensive guy. I played receiver, but I love watching good defense. And
they lost to Butler in the Final Four.
Yeah, which Butler almost made this list too. They almost made it with some of the runs that they went on. I still remember that game that Butler played against Florida and lost in the last
70-62
to Mike Miller. And then Butler almost won a national championship. Gordon Hayward almost hit that half-court shot at the buzzer, but I think it hit the backboard and rimmed out. So, look, there's some people are going to want to add in the comments, please. If we miss somebody, if you like our list, you think it's perfect, tell us. If there's some teams we need to add or some teams we need to replace, please tell us. But, guys, will we get a St. Peter's this year?
Oh, yeah.
Loyola Chicago? Y'all think we're going to get a run like
somebody will be on this list.
We always get one.
I hope so.
We always get one.
I just hope they don't beat Auburn. But we appreciate you guys. Make sure you check out Locker Room Talk tomorrow. We're back live Friday and taking your calls. And I'm sure the Michigan State fans are going to be super excited to talk to us.